Just fucking do it. Subscribe now.
And 26 a share is the debt service coverage ratio is 1.8.
And
The offer price.
And 36 is 1.3 or 2 or 4.
Correct. Yeah.
Go
That's
ahead. Say what you want to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, the 36 is 8 times EBITDA. 26, they said they wouldn't approve because they said 36 is even too low of an offer for us. 36 is too low of an offer, so 26, you could forget about it. The 36 was 8 times. The only way it worked is if their synergies were of such great value that it would make sense to pay 8 times for such a large billion-dollar corporation. If it was, so maybe their synergies could bring it down to 5 times. Maybe in that case, it'd be good for them specifically.
Yeah, but you're not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you're not there to add synergies. You're going to make up. So it's like the other guy. We're cross-selling and we're doing. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's our business. We're not using that to add value to your piece of shit.
I agree. He kind of did his own numbers while Joe and I were working on ours. I had a question for you because we got our EBITDA. Because again, this is machinery, so it's very heavy in depreciation. So depreciation was like almost 400 million. 400 million a year. All right. So the EBITDA number, EBITDA debt service coverage ratio at $36 per share is a 1.3 ratio. However, my question, because a lot of it's depreciation, what number are you really looking at for cash flow? Because I'm suspect that can cover debt service.
Yeah, well, things that are heavily, like 5-year depreciation or accelerated depreciation, distorts the cash flow number. When I tell you 50% of the bottom line, I normally say 40 to 60%. And for the heavily depreciated up front, it reduces the cash flows as much as 20, 30%. But not that many guys are out there buying heavy equipment deals. You know, it's normally straight line depreciation over 15 or 20 years.
So like, for instance, this EBIT number is 208 million. EBITDA is 290 million. However, the net income number is only 60 million.
Okay, well, that's skewed 2/3.
Exactly.
At least 2/3.
So my question was, like the debt service coverage ratio, if you use net income, I'm not saying that's the right number, it's like 0.26. Whereas the EBITDA numbers, the debt service coverage ratio is 1.3. Now, if you use EBIT or net operating, I'm trying to figure out, like, you look more at like the net operating number or net operating.
Well, I mean, what I do, not just me, Warren Buffett, a bunch of guys, they stay away from heavily accelerated depreciation deals because, the equipment may be supposed to last 5 years and it only lasts 3. For example, in mining, I mean, the shit's fall apart all the time. And even though it's got, I think it's 7-year depreciation on mining equipment, the heavy mining equipment, but it only may last 2 or 3 years. So the easy way, the safest way is just to stay away from those. I know you have the case, but I mean, is to stay away from that. And especially when you're neophytes or virgins in this deal, I run away from deals like that, or I did. Although then I got in the mining business, and so I was forced to learn, how long this stuff really lasts. But but in the case that you just gave me, 2/3 of the cash flow disappears, more or less 2/3, and that's not for sure. And so if the guesstimate is 2/3, it could be 7/8. So
you'd almost buy it for nickels on the dollar.
Correct.
You'd say, okay, yeah, you got 100 million in equipment, but I'm only going to give you 15 million for it.
Correct.
Or some shit like that.
And that happens all the time. And I was buying in the first oil crash that I experienced in the early 80s, I was buying oil rigs at 5 cents on the pound scrap metal value. You might have paid 20, 25 million for a rig and it weighs, 10,000 pounds. And so I'm giving you, a nickel for every pound, $5,000. Plus, I charge you to move your fucking rig off that site to where my storage is. And there's guys, a guy named Tommy Littlepage, God rest his soul, from Graham, Texas, lived in a teepee and all. It's a real Native American. He used to wait around for the cycles every 6 to 8 years. He'd go around, he'd sell rigs at the top, and he'd go buy and back for a nickel on the pound. And that's all he did. He also never bought a jet. He was always telling people he needed a test flight. And so they fly you for free. And he finally died in one of those test flights. And his wife sold his between $200 and $400 million worth of oil company in 48 hours. She's the one I tell the story. We were in Arm & Hammer's restaurant, Occidental Towers, and this is a restaurant where, they wear white gloves and they serve you, and the waiters have tails, etc. And Tommy's looking at his menu upside down because he couldn't read. And so his wife said, Mr. Peña, could you help Tommy with the menu? And so I look over, I realize it's upside down. So then I looked at it, and so I ordered for him. And I didn't do this to make him look funny. I ordered escargot. I don't know why I did that. And so when they brought the escargot, they have the little pliers that you hold the shell. And when he put the little pliers in the shell popped out, and his wife always read the Bible. It popped out across his lap into her Bible, and had butter all over her Bible. And I go, fuck. And then as we left the restaurant, one of the other guys, this was my first roll-up that failed in 81. We had a guy that had 29 or 49 workover rigs, the rigs that you come in and you make the wells operate again. And he said, I'll have a Jack Daniels. So the guy came and he brought him a Jack Daniels in the rice. And I want a bottle of Jack Daniels. So afterwards, then everybody's drunk, except Tommy's wife, who was a Bible thumper. And so he says, I want to see some fucking production. So we drove from downtown Los Angeles to Long Beach, where they've got thousands of nodding donkeys along the beach. And this is before they allowed you to go offshore. And we saw thousands and thousands and thousands. And he said, God damn, I feel right at home. So he threw a rock into an open field. He says, I'm going to drill a goddamn well there, boy. And it took him a year and a half to get permission. And he drilled a fucking well, and it was a productive well. And that's how he found oil. I mean, he just drive Texas, Oklahoma. I got the feeling right here. And he threw a fucking rock. And he was Graham. I moved to Graham, Texas, because I bought my first oil drilling company there, and it was called Oil Drill Inc. And I wanted to learn the drilling business, and I worked the rigs, and I got up in the tower, and I did all that shit, And almost everybody that works the rigs loses fingers. They got signs all over to be careful, but people still lose their fingers. And now it's more computerized, because when you throw the chain, you think you've got about 25 inches or 22 inches of chain you throw around, and invariably somebody's thumbs there, and it, boom, snaps it like that. And so, but anyway, yeah, but getting back to your, there's certain things, unless you, getting back to them, Berkshire Hathaway appointing an exploration guy from Canada speaks volumes. That means they're going to have a higher risk profile. The guy that was going to be running Berkshire Hathaway in the next few years understands risk, understands how to assess risk. That's his business. And so it's going to take more risky investments than perhaps Munger would have or Warren does now, but a slower pace. They're not going to be able to, the board's not just going to approve everything willy-nilly after, when you have a 50, 60 year. But it also says that hydrocarbons are here forever.
I was going to ask something about that.
But
or industrial things.
The people are, what are they smoking? Laughing gas? That's just it. It's not going away.
He's probably bullish on industrials too.
Yeah.
Heavy industrials, having a guy like that,
Yeah.
I'd imagine.
So in a way, you could, maybe this is not exactly at all the same, but it just theoretically, when you look at a business with real estate, you try to separate them. It's kind of the same principle where you're trying to separate because there's the heavy assets from the cash flow to evaluate.
No, well, the only thing that's worth anything is the cash flow.
Yeah, but
what produces? It's like a dental office.
Yeah,
the 4 dentists are the cash flow, or the hygienists that are cleaning teeth, not the fucking parking lot, not the building, not the pretty paintings on the walls. I mean. And when you tell them, this is fine. I'll take an option on you should keep the building. And most of the dentists and the doctors, chiropractors, etc., built these fucking buildings because their accountant says you need a pension, something adjunct to your pension plan. Okay? And even though when you're done and you sell the practice, somebody's going to need that building. And whoever you sell the property to will be your tenant. And that's why 75 at least percent of the single proprietors own the building. Even in the strip malls, they own the building. And that was great advice in the 80s and 90s, but it's not so great advice now. Because, depending on your lease agreements, you can find cheaper strip malls. I don't know if they're still building strip malls, but for 30, 40 years, they built a plethora of them, tons of them. It's just like, I told you I stayed in Motel 6. Back in the 70s, it was cost $6 to stay there. And everybody got in the motel hunt, so to speak, and then the smaller hotels, et cetera, et cetera. And but now there's hostels, there's B&B, and all this stuff that knocks that model in the ass. Nothing's forever. Nothing.
And conceptually, if they had all this equipment to depreciate, they would have already offset their income and sheltered it. So maybe I'm wrong thinking this, but I would think they should.
It should have.
They would let it go for a cheaper price than their cost.
Well, it depends, who their son-in-law accountant who just got, or their brother-in-law lawyer. A lot of these people, unfortunately, the last person to give input and information sways them. And that's why, unlike you've heard, when the guy says yes and he signs, I'm like a wart on his back. I'm not leaving. Because anything can happen. I make sure he doesn't get hit by the car crossing the fucking street. And I've had guys die right at the signature thing, Fuck. Are you sure he's dead? They used to tease me. I've said this before. Lefties, they sign it across their signature. And why are all your contracts ink smudged? Not all, but And I always used to say they're lefties. Nobody ever checked. Nobody ever checked.
Well, our next case is almost a complete opposite. It's a pharmacy with almost no heavy equipment. Pharmacy roll-up. Do you want to get into that one now?
Yeah.
Are you guys ready? Do you have anything to comment?
I was just going to comment on what we found online to ask what his opinion was on the what it says what multiples. That's
for which one?
For the pharmacy.
Okay, so I wanted to just comment. So our case on the pharmacy, switching gears, it did not have EBITDA, but it had top line revenue. It had top line revenue, gross revenue, and net profit number.
Is that net after tax?
Before, which is why it is almost. I was saying it's almost EBITDA because it's before tax. Just the depreciation on pills isn't going to be too crazy. It's a more accurate number.
Okay, so add 50% on it, and what is it? The number?
Right, 200.
I don't know if I added the 50.
137 plus 50%. 124, 700 plus 50%.
I didn't add the 50%. But I did want to make one comment. So I Googled or used Perplexity, another AI platform, and asked what multiples do pharmacies use to trade at? And it gave a one for EBITDA, but it also gave a revenue multiples and percentage of gross sales multiples. So I did all three: revenue multiple, percentage of gross sales, just to see where everything kind of fell at. And I didn't add the 50% onto the EBIT number.
Because it was before tax.
Okay.
I thought it's a little bit too much to add.
It's basically EBIT, right?
Yeah.
So I just did a 5x times the EBIT.
And came up with what?
I came up with the value was $528 million, and I used a 7% rate for debt, 10-year term. It still has a net profit of $105,620,000. So cash flow after debt is $32,400,000 $40,000. That gives a debt service coverage ratio of 1.435, or cash after debt $32 million.